Hi, I'm Myriam Marquez, editorial page editor for the Miami Herald.
And I'm Sergio Bustos, the politics editor at the Miami Herald.
And we're here to give you the second update of the evening, starting with the Nelson Mack race, U.S. Senate.
Myriam, this race has been everything about dull as dull can be. And so it's been no surprise it hadn't drawn a lot of attention, but it looks like at this point, Nelson looks like he's a very comfortable lead and will be returning to Washington for another 6 years.
And he really didn't do much campaigning in your typical sense, certainly not in what you would expect. He sort of laid very low, and it was all about trying to identify early on Connie Mack as someone who had a troubled past, which was so many years before.
Right.
And then Connie Mack, for his part, just kept to the talking points about trying to tie Nelson to Obamacare, and it sort of didn't seem to work.
No, right on every point. I think it was a stealth Senate race. Truly was.
So what's the big surprise of the polling
You
today?
wouldn't believe the exit polling shows, drumroll please, that the economy was the top concern of most voters nationwide and in Florida. No surprise here in Florida especially.
No, and taxes, I guess, is the other big issue. I mean, the whole economy is teetering on, depending on which plan, who becomes president, and then whether it can pass through Congress. And then, of course, we have that fiscal cliff coming in at the end of the year where they've got to, make some very tough decisions for the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because the decisions being made by voters is one thing today, but that decision about the fiscal cliff is going to be a much bigger one come tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, early voting is in, and absentee ballots are counted except for the ones that were done today. That were put in today. And what we're seeing so far is, and these numbers really don't mean anything Florida statewide, but in Miami-Dade, we see that Obama's leading about 2/3 to 1/3 for Romney. On absentees, it's almost even with Romney leading by a few hundred votes. But what does this mean overall? I guess once we really get into the panhandle and into the I-4 corridor, it's going to change dramatically.
Yeah, right now it looks like for the exit polls that we have, there's actually 3 states. Now it's Virginia, it's Florida, and it's Ohio that's too close to call. Here in Florida, like you said, the Panhandle ends their polls at 8 o'clock. So that's a lot of people to count up there, and that's mostly Republican. And it may come down again to the I-4 corridor, that's that area that stretches from Tampa all the way to Orlando.
Right, and Volusia County, for instance, usually leans Democratic, and they're seeing a spike in Romney votes, so they're feeling comfortable. That's Daytona Beach area. Now, let's talk a little bit locally. Some of the amendments that are coming in for the charter amendment, I think we expect that we're going to see term limits for our county commissioners. That's looking like it's going to happen. And also there's the Pets Trust, and that's a non-binding referendum. So that's really about whether it's to give the county commission some kind of backbone to say, okay, we're going to now put some money into trying to spay and neuter pets instead of killing them all. So it'll be interesting to see if it passes with a big number of votes, whether the county commission will feel that they're empowered to do this, because they really have not felt that, it's just a no new taxes, no spending on these kinds of things. And so it'll be interesting to see if that'll happen.
Yeah, and I think, again, the problem with both the constitutional amendments and these local measures is they've added so many pages to the ballot that folks are really bewildered and are probably just going to say no, and it may be a very difficult hurdle to overcome.
There'll be a lot of undercounts, a lot of undervoting in that, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the long lines. That's a huge problem right now.
Yeah, in fact, I'll check my latest update, and it looks like there are long lines in Hialeah. There's still long lines in West Kendall. There's long lines in Gould, and there's also long lines in Brickell. And when we talk about long lines, we're talking about 400 to 500 people at this hour, at 8:15 at night. And the prediction is, Myriam, that we could have people voting in Miami-Dade up until 12, 1 in the morning, maybe even beyond.
Pajama party. All right, we'll be back in a little bit.